Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp of the Limp, and I'm here with one I know it's going to surprise you guys to see me covering because I have not covered a DVG game in a very, very long time. It's probably been years, but I've got Fulcrum Leader here on the table, and I'm going to be covering this one. Now, I'll go ahead and address it specifically. The reason I am reviewing Fulcrum Leader is because the designer sent it to me, not DVG. DVG, they've gotten a bad habit. Myself and a bunch of other reviewers stopped being willing to cover their stuff because they just said, yeah, no, we want you to market for us, but we're not going to send you the game. If you want the game, you need to buy it. And reviewers didn't take kindly to that because a lot of reviewers, we don't charge, right? And especially if it's a smaller company, family-run company, I never charge them to do a video. They just send me the game and I tell them, thank you. That's it. That's where I leave it. And I like being able to help out smaller companies. And they were really good about that for a while. And then they changed their minds, flipped it, said they wanted to do it a different way. Okay, but reviewers aren't going to be jumping over themselves to help you out if you don't show just the smallest modicum of gratitude for the help, the hours of work that they put in producing video content to promote your game and make you money. But the designer of the game was a fellow Marine. He pulled the Marine card and got me to do the interview for him. And I am very happy to review the game because I do like the game. One of the things that I will address right off the bat, though, that I didn't like, and I noticed it when the box came in, was I think the game designer's name needs to be front and center on the box. They put the person who designed the cover art on the box, but they put the designer's names. It took me a sec to find it. I didn't think they had actually put the designer's names on it, but it's actually on the back of the box, not the front of the box. I had actually missed it because it was down here in the bottom. And instead of being in white or yellow text, it's in black text right next to a black box. So it kind of blends in a little bit more than it should be. And I didn't like that. But, personal opinion on it. The game is designed by Benjamin Chi and Douglas Glover. Douglas is the one that I did the interview with way back when and is the one that insisted on sending me the game. So thank you to Douglas. Let's do the usual. Let's go down to the table. Let's look at the components, get a little example of how the game plays, and then we'll come up here and do some final thoughts on it. All right, so here we are down at the table. I've got a quick game set up here to show you guys all the stuff that comes with this. But we're going to go over the components first, and then I'll give you a quick example of play. And y'all just going to have to forgive me. My voice style still sounds off. I am still dealing with this damn chest cold my kids gave me. Anyway. Here we have our instruction manual. This is actually a little bit nicer than the previous ones that I've seen with the Leader series. You'll notice it's a lot bigger. It appears that they decided with the newest game, so Fulcrum, and I'm assuming Eagle Leader as well, to basically have this as all encompassing. So it has all the rules for this Leader series in it and any of the expansions, because some of the expansions have their own rules. But to keep you from having to have a bunch of separate smaller rule books, they included all those special rules in a one-stop shopping zone here with the rule book. That way you didn't have, separate little small booklets for each one of those little expansion packs. I'll show you those later when we get done with our example of play. But one of the things I like about the rule book is it's fairly large. I mean, way larger than DVG's usual. See, it's over 100 pages, but large type, plenty of pictures. A lot of it's just explaining all the different aircraft and weapon components there at the back. The actual rules themselves go to in the 70s, so it's not that much, and it's not a deep read. If you've played one of the Leader series before, you're going to have a good grasp, and you're really just kind of reading this to find out the new information in here. Now, besides that, we do have a large selection of player aids. Many of them are going to be things like this, our selections of different campaigns that you can fly. The base game comes with a lot. I do like that it has one that is a specific introductory campaign. So basically, this is the learning campaign, and it tells you day by day what you're going to have going on. And the rest of them are just regular scenarios like you would have All of them will have a picture of their target area. The standard weapons that you can use, those are the free weapons. You don't have to pay extra SO points for them. Special weapons that you do have SO points that you need to pay to use those. And then any threats that you will find in this specific zone, that especially is going to come into play when you have things like the expansions added in, because they add extra threats, extra sights, especially the naval one gives you the ability to have naval targets. So you'll have to look here to see which ones of those that you're going to be fighting. And it kind of gives you a draw bucket to choose from when you're playing through this scenario. Down here, it gets into the, hey, what's going on? The difficulty, they will be different. Some are standard, skilled, very difficult. Let's see if we have one. Skilled, standard. Some of the expansions are have harder scenarios. This one's an introductory scenario, so it tells you how hard it's going to be. Just like in our previous leader series, they are going to have different time links for each one of the different campaigns. So you have short, medium, and long. Tells you how many days, and that's basically how many sets of missions you're going to run, and then the SO points that you're going to get to spend. Obviously, the longer the campaign, the more SO points you're going to get. And down at the bottom, just like in our other leaders series, we have our tracks that we're going to keep track of. We still have the Intel, Infra, and Ops tracks, but I forget what the other track it is that was removed, but basically Recon, that's what was removed, Recon, is kind of replaced by this loyalty track, and that's the Soviet Union having their political military arm kind of involved in all of their aspects. That's kept track of here. So basically you got to keep the party happy, otherwise they'll come down on you too. So that's simulated into these games as well. Besides the scenarios, we do have a handful of help sheets, things that will explain, combat, all the different special abilities for your different pilot skills and traits that they can have, and a nice flow chart here for the sequence of play. I like this. This is a nice inclusion into it, into the leader series. So you do have a handful of these. So once you understand the roles, you don't have to keep pulling out the rule book, because some information isn't written down like here with our sequence of play, like how many aircraft you get depending on your campaign length. You get a selection depending if you're doing short, medium, or long. For example, I've got a short one set up here. So I get 1 newbie, 2 green, 4 average, and 1 skilled. But if I'm doing a medium or long, I get more aircraft of higher skill levels. Now, I'm not going to pull them out, but something that was interesting that they included was a bunch of player aids that had errata for a lot of the previous leader series. So if you got any of the previous leader games, there's a stack of different player aids for all those different leader games that kind of updated the rules. Nice inclusion for those who have the previous games, so you can get. Lastly, we have our kind of like aircraft or airbase station here, and this is a newer player aid. I would think I haven't seen some of their later leader series games, but I know this wasn't something they had in some of the original ones. But it just gives you a spot to keep track of all your different airplane counters, the ones that you have, their different pilot skill levels, all that good stuff. I just throw my cards down over here. And then if you have any aircraft that are shaken or damaged, or any special munitions that you bought, it just gives you a place to keep track of all that stuff. I like this one. This is a nice inclusion. Now, obviously, with this being a leader series, it is going to have a just buttload amount of cards in it. This is no different. It came with 6 packs of cards, and then each one of the expansion packs has a pack of cards that gets included with it. And that adds things like different target sites, different aircraft that get added into it, all their different skill levels, because all of these cards are going to be double-sided. So, for example, this is my flight leader, my commanding officer for my little air squadron. He's the most skilled, being skilled level, and the opposite side is average. That's down below that. Besides that, there are 2 other cards that are associated with him. One has the green and newbie side, and then the other is veteran and legendary. So for each pilot, you will have 3 cards of 6 differing skill levels. Just like in our other Leader Series games, they will have their call signs at the top, and evidently the Soviets don't use specific call signs. They'll have a name for the squadron itself and then numbers. So this is Obsidian 141, and the rest are Obsidian 142, 143, 140. They're just numbered. They don't have their individual like call signs. On the left side, it tells you what aircraft this is. This is a MiG-29 Fulcrum C. It's a touch better than the base Fulcrum. There's the Fulcrum A, I believe, because this one has built-in ECM. But because I chose a aircraft that is better than the average, than the base level, I have to pay SO points to include this. Again, depending on the length of the campaign, here I'm having to pay 2 SO points. But you can balance that out because some aircraft cards have a gain SO points because they are a step down. They're not as good as that base level MiG-29. And this is one of those aircraft, the Yak 38 here. This is a expansion aircraft. This actually comes from the naval expansion, and it is a little step down. So I gain an SO point for including this aircraft. So I took a few of these to kind of offset the cost of those MiG-29Cs that I included in my squadron. Besides that, all of them will have a set of stats, their weight points that they can carry, their cool level, which is how much stress they can remove. If they have a built-in ECM that will give them kind of defenses, think of it kind of like armor. You can prevent yourself from getting hit. And then situational awareness, that gives them a chance to fire extra shots. They get to fire during the fast and slow phase if they have any of these situational awareness tokens. Down here at the bottom, this is their stress level and then their stats at that stress level. So if he's at 0 to 4 stress, he's good to go. He gets +2/+2, which is really good. But if he starts gaining stress, now he's shaken, now he's kind of worn out, his stats go down, he's not quite as good. And then below that, these are all the different types of weapons this aircraft can carry. And if it includes a cannon, it is listed down here. Generally, all cannons have a range of 0 and a hit value of 10, which means you only get to hit it on a roll of a D10 if you roll the 10. Not that good, but better than nothing. And it is important to make sure you keep these on the right side because like I show you here, this is the back side of the card, but this is a step down. This is average instead of skilled. And you see his stats are lower. +1/+1, -1, -1, instead of the +2/+2, 0/0 that he had before. Still same weapons though that he can carry. Now, like I said, all aircraft get kitted out with different types of munitions. This is an example of some of the things that I've thrown on my aircraft. Up at the top left, that's their weight points. And then over here on the right side is the stats. Top right number is what you need to roll on a D10 equal to or higher to hit. If you have multiple numbers, that means the weapon can cause multiple hits each time you hit that number or higher. So this one has 7 and 10, so it can cause 1 or 2 hits depending if you get higher than a 7 or higher than a 10. Obviously, on a D10 to get higher, equal to the 10 or higher, you've got to have, the bonus stats to get up there. Tokens that have the yellow stripe indicate that they are air-to-air targets, same as the bandit targets we'll be fighting. They have yellow stripes to indicate that they are meant for that air-to-air, aircraft-to-aircraft use. And then some of them will have stats like we see down here on the lower right. This can mean things like firing it at high altitude, low altitude, whether it's dispersed, it's range. Like our example here, this one is an extended range weapon, can't be fired at range 0, which is the same space on our target board, but can be fired at range 5, which means it can be fired like over the horizon, reach out and touch someone. You can actually start your match with weapons like this and take out some of those bandits before you even start. Besides those cards, we have some interesting cards that we can include as well. You can pay for bonus aircraft to go on specific missions. For example, this Nevsky can be paid for at 1 SO point, which means it will fly for 1 SO point with this mission. And this one gives you a +1 to hit when attacking naval targets. So if you're attacking a naval target card and you have naval sites out there, this would be a good one to include. And they have different skill levels, just like our pilots do. Similar to that, there are ground crews that you can have now. And again, that's going to vary depending on the expansions you include. This is a naval expansion, again, that I'm showing off here. And this is an aircraft carrier that you get to add. It doesn't directly participate in the battle, but it gets to add certain bonuses to your aircraft. For example, this is a high level one. At veteran level, it adds 2 situational awareness counters that any of your aircraft can use, and it grants bonuses in air-to-air, underground, and ECM, so it makes your aircraft a little more survivable. Besides that, we are going to have our usual target cards, event cards, and new to this game is the Zampolit card. This has to be drawn as well each turn, and this is the Soviet leadership, the party interfering with your combat missions. And basically the officers are trying to make themselves look good by adding extra stress onto your crew so they can report that they are doing their commissar duties and, you know, taking the whip and keeping you guys motivated for the good of the party. And these have to be drawn as well. This is new to Fulcrum Leader. And we do have a nicely mounted board. I got to give it to them. I always like it when these boards are mounted. And one of the good things that DVG, I always have to give it to them, they always do put the sequence of play right here on the left side of the board or wherever on the board. So you can look here to find out, hey, boom, 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 these are steps I have to do. So let's have a little example of play real quick here to show you how Fulcrum Leader is going to play out. First thing that we got to do is we got to draw our Zampolit card. And again, you will have a Zampolit in your crew. You will have a token that signifies that plane is your Zampolit. For example, for my crew, I picked the Zampolit as the Apollyon 1203, and I picked the green guy. I was like, all right, he's political. He's not, you know, paying too much attention to his pilot skills. You can roll or you can choose whoever you want to be your Zampolit. Now, when it comes to your CO, your commanding officer, flight leader, that has to be your highest skilled pilot. But for your Zampolit, he does not have to be the highest pilot skill rating. And if he is killed, just like your CO, he can be replaced by someone else in your flight squadron. These guys can obviously go out on missions just like the rest of your squadron. And like I was saying, you can have pilot skills. Like, for example, I picked elusive for most of my pilots with SO points that I had left because I like to have durable pilots. It adds +1 to their ECM rolls. But there are Zampolit skills as well that you can add just to your Zampolit. For example, mine, I picked Zealous. After making an ATG roll against the target, not sights, expend the token to double the damage inflicted. So on missions he goes on, I can expend that token to do a little extra damage to the target. But let's draw our Zampolit card. When we look here, we have attention, hand me the promotion list, comrade, and I will be happy to sign off on your selections. If the loyalty counter is pointing to the right of the start space, gain 3 XP to be freely distributed to any pilot. And for me, I would actually gain 3 XP because I am on the start space and if the token is pointing to the right of it. So I've gained some XP points. But those Zampolit cards can add bad things. They can force you to take on extra missions. And even though your crew's already stressed out or they're shaken already, they're wanting to make themselves look good to the party. So you have to force your pilots to go on extra long missions. That loyalty track that I was just showing you also tells you how many targets you can draw up to for the current day's turn. For me, it would be up to 3, but we'll draw a couple of cards and see what we can have as our targets. And we're definitely going to have to draw more than one because our first one is a secondary. This is a naval target vehicle frigate screen, and it is target 51. We see here all the number of targets that can be included. So you will put in all the target cards into your deck that match these numbers. All of these numbers are the ones that you will include as your targets. Obviously, this is part of the naval expansion, so some of them are going to be ground sites and some of them are going to be naval sites. And you make sure that you have two separate drawables for your naval and your ground sites. That is listed down here on your threats. And I just find it makes it easier when you're going to set up if you have those separated out. So if you're attacking a naval target, for example, you will be able to draw those out quickly. And we'll draw another target to see what our primary would be. And here we get a supply depot, target 33. And the number of aircraft listed up here in the top left, we could take up to 5 aircraft. There are optional rules where you can gain SO points for taking less aircraft or lose points for taking more aircraft. But here in the center, it tells you what's going on with the target. Any changes that happen to your different tracks, loyalty, intel, infra, whether you will gain points depending if you destroy this target. It's victory points if you destroy it, how many hits are required to destroy it, and then the number of sites and bandits that will be there in the different approach and center area. And then obviously any special rules for it will be listed down here on the bottom. So for us, we're going to go with our secondary target. This one's easy, and like I said, I wanted to show off something naval anyway, so we'll stick with our little secondary target here. You do have to, if you do a secondary, you do have to do a primary. We can take up to 4 aircraft, and we have a number of different sites and bandits that we will have to draw for here. All right, so here's where you're going to assign your pilots, get all their weapons, and then place out all our different bandits and sites. And just to give you an example of one of the aircraft that I'm bringing one from our expansion, the Apollyon 1208. It's one of my green pilots, and I'm bringing him basically to do some suppression work against the enemy. Gave him a buttload of rockets and an ECM pod because he doesn't have built-in ECM, and the rockets because they have a bonus when used for suppression. So that's what I'm going to use those little things for. Try to keep the enemy from hurting any of my other planes or this plane, just kind of keep their noses down. Plus, I gave him the gunfighter skill, which gives him a +1 with his cannon, making him just a little bit more likely to hit his target. And as an example of one of my MiG-29 Fulcrum Cs, I'm bringing 3 of these, and they're outfitted mainly the same way, a couple of different slots going with them. Gave each one of them a long-range, extended-range weapon, so I can start the mission off by putting some of these out and hopefully take out a good chunk of the bandits that are out there before they even get a chance to fire back at my guys. Some regular air-to-air weapons up to range 1, and then a couple of heavier bombs that can do up to 4 points of damage if they roll really well. And like I said, each one of them I gave the elusive skill, which will add to their built-in ECM bonus. All right, so once you have your target card placed, you will draw the number of bandits for each one of the approach areas and the center area, and same with your sites. For here, we have to draw 1 bandit for each of the 4 different approach zones and 1 for our center area. In this case, we ended up getting a couple of F-14s and an F-18 in our approach and center area, but we also got 2 no bandit counters, so the 2 no bandit counters will be removed. Now we do the same thing with our sites up to the number, so we'll draw again 1 site for each of the 4 approach areas and 2 sites for our center area. Now we see we got a bunch of Sea Sparrows and a couple of RIM 66 missile defense systems that are set up protecting our frigate screen here. One thing about the naval missions that I can't show off that is really cool expansion in Fulcrum Leader is the fact that they do not use the angle of attack counters. Now, when it comes to a land-based mission, any site that has a range of 1 or higher that is in these approach and pre-approach areas, not the center or the outside, just these approach zones, will have an angle of attack counter placed down with the arrow pointing away from the target. And what that does is it shows the only zones that you can attack that site from, but it's the only zones that site can attack from. So think of it like it's a missile system that's up against a mountain or a big hill or something like that. It can't be hit from its backside, but it can point out and defend in this direction. This one would have completely open area, so it could be hit from anywhere. Again, that's only for land-based sites. It is not used in this naval expansion, but I really do like that inclusion. It changes up the nature of the land-based sites to add a little more thematic gameplay value. And there's a large selection of these angle of attack counters that get included. Some of them are very narrow in the scope of their attack, and then some of them you can attack from any direction. That's going to be a random draw for all the sites that have a range of 1 or higher, none of the range 0 sites. Lastly, you place your own aircraft counters in the standoff attack areas at their either high or low altitude sides. Now, technically, you do this next part before setup, but I always just set up and then do this part. But you are going to draw an event card and look at the target bound zone. Then you'll draw another event card to see what happens over the target. And then once you've finished your mission, there is one final event draw when you are leaving your target. So our first one, we would draw and we would look here to see what is going to happen. Here at the top, this is towards our target. We can discard 3 weight points worth of air-to-ground counters to gain a victory point. And I'm probably going to skip that because I want to use those air-to-ground counters. I don't have too many of them, so I need to make use of the ones that I have. Then we draw another one and we look in the center, and this tells us what happens now that we are over our target zone. And in this case, we get to choose one pilot to gain 1 situational awareness for this mission. Those counters look like this. And remember, like I said, it gives your pilot a chance to attack in both the fast and the slow segment, so they get to attack twice in the same turn. Now, this is something new to Fulcrum Leader. I'm not entirely sure if it's been included in others, but the previous ones I was playing was like Corsair Leader, which is just guns. They didn't have missiles and radars and all that cool stuff. But this is your extended range weapons attack. And that is those long range weapons that I had mentioned previously that have a range of 5. These get to be fired at the beginning of the match before anything else is done, and they can be targeted towards any bandits that are on the map. In this case, it worked out perfectly because I brought 3 of these, and there are 3 bandit counters here, so I can have one of my Fulcrum leaders, one of my Fulcrums here, fire a missile at each one of the bandits. So this is simulating the fact that they are kind of right there at the edge of the horizon, firing as far as their radar can reach to hit the enemy target from an extended range. In this case, we rolled a 5, a 9, and a 2. The 9 is obviously going to be a hit, so it will take out our enemy bandit there. The 5 normally would miss, but the combination of the pilot skill bonus and the bonus that we are getting from our ground crew card here that gives us a air-to-air bonus of +2 is more than enough to increase that up to a hit, which again, we need a 7 or higher on this token to count. So that one will also be a hit. This one being a 2, even with the bonuses that we're getting, is not quite high enough, so that bandit will survive to live to fight another day. Make sure that you don't forget that the counters that you use to fire these shots, just like any of the others, are use and lose. You fire those weapons and they're gone. It's 1-use shots only. Now, the way the game is going to progress from here is it's going to be fast aircraft, then the sights and bandits, and then slow aircraft. And what I mean by that is down here on the cards where it says speed, it's either going to say fast or it's going to say slow. Slow means you react after the enemy. Fast means you react before the enemy. Don't forget, though, that those situational awareness counters can be used to act again in a different time frame. So an aircraft like this one that only acts in the slow time frame can use a situational awareness token if they have them, whether they are gaining them from an asset like this or the event card that we saw earlier to attack in the fast and then again in the slow part. In this example, all of my aircraft are slow, so they are not going to act. Then the bandits are going to act. Then my aircraft will be able to act and then move. So in this case, the only enemy sight or bandit that has range is our F-14 over here that has a range of 4. He can really reach out and touch someone. He can reach out and touch someone at high or low altitude, and he has very good stats. He only misses on a 1 on a D10 roll. He chooses to make an attack over here at Obsidian 146. And if you have 2 different aircraft that are same range away, in this case, it is 1-2 range, 1-2, same here. For either one, you can either roll a die or just pick if it's the same. It doesn't really matter. We'll say that he is attacking Obsidian 146. In that case, you're going to roll the D10 and look at his stats to determine what type of damage he does. And in this case, when they are attacking your aircraft, they are trying to do similar to what our bomb tokens do. Equal to or the first number, equal to or the second number, equal to or higher than the third number to do varying levels of damage. When it comes to bandits and sights attacking your aircraft, unlike the ground weapons we fire that cause varying levels of hits, they will do either 1 point of stress for meeting the first number. They will damage your aircraft if they equal the second number. Damage means that you lose all your weapon tokens, all your situational awareness tokens, basically all your bonuses. The aircraft is still flying, but it needs to escape. It can't fight in this battle any longer. And if it's equal to or higher than the third number, then that counts as being destroyed. And to make sure I mention it and don't forget it, there at the top left, there is modifiers that apply when we are firing at them as well. Those will come into play on top of things like those extended range shots that I took earlier. And carrying weight points can reduce your chance of hitting with air-to-air attacks. I forgot to mention that a second ago, but our modifiers were enough to make sure that we were able to overpower that modifier. So in this case, our F-14 takes a missile shot at our Obsidian 146 and they hit. They get a roll of a 7 against the Obsidian. So this would count as our aircraft being damaged, but we have options. In this case, your options are going to be either do a decoy, a suppress, or going evasive. Now, if you choose to go evasive, you're going to do this before the bandit makes their attack because they will roll 2 dice and choose the lower of the 2 dice to determine what their outcome is. That option does incur 1 stress to your pilot, though. Your decoy ability is the ECM that I was talking about having on all of my different aircraft. That allows you to make a roll. If it is equal to or higher than their ECM rating, then the enemy's attack is considered a miss. In this case, our ECM rating is a 6, but we're getting a bonus to that from our ground crew out here that gives us a +1 and the elusive skill that gives us another +1. So in fact, we just need a roll of a 4 or higher to counteract the enemy's attack. Here we roll a 5, which again is modified high enough to cancel out the enemy's attack. But if we had rolled low and it wasn't high enough, we would still have one option if we could make an attack against the enemy. And that's the suppress option that I had mentioned earlier. To suppress either a bandit or a sight, you have to be able to make an attack against that enemy with one of your weapon counters or a cannon if you're in the same zone as them. If the attack succeeds, then that does cancel out the enemy's attack as well. However, if you were to use a missile token, let's say we were 1 closer and in range of firing this missile at them, that only suppresses their attack. It does not damage the enemy. And all modifiers apply just like when making a normal attack. This is only to stop their attack, not to damage them. All right, so let's say that we've continued on and this is our circumstances. Now we've been able to wipe out the one remaining bandit and a good chunk of the sites, and we're over here at our target. And now we want to drop our munitions onto the target to try to get the number of hits. You have to be at the right altitude and range to be able to use your weapons. In the case of these unguided munitions, the aircraft have to be at high altitude and at range 0. They are in the center zone, so they can use these weapons against them. Our other aircraft trailing over here had some rockets left, and it's using the rockets to make an attack, not a suppression, so it doesn't get that bonus, but he has to be at low altitude and it's up to range 1, so he can fire the rockets from here to conduct his attack. All right, so let's say these were our rolls that we got for our unguided bombs here. This is going to be more than enough to tear apart the frigate screen. Our 8 over here is equal to the 7 or higher, which would normally get us 3. But don't forget the pilot skill bonus of the plus air to ground targets, and also that we paid extra for having our aircraft here that gains us against naval targets, and we've got our carrier out there giving us a little bonus against naval as well, which is enough to bump this up to cause 4 hits. We automatically get the 4 hits from the 10 rolled over here, and I love the little aircraft on it. And our 3 would only be enough to get 1 hit, but between the pilot skill bonuses and the other bonuses that I mentioned above, he will be able to get at least a couple of hits from his bomb. We don't even need to worry about the rockets, as we've caused more than enough damage to take out our frigate screen. At this point, your aircraft will bug out and you will gain any of the bonuses listed down on the card and the victory points. But don't forget that we have to draw one final card, and now we're looking at the bottom of it to see what the event is. In this case, if no pilots were destroyed during this mission, we gain 4 SO points. Our mission would have been a success. We took out our target, we would gain our bonuses, and we would flick on to the next target for our day, which again was that supply depot that we had drawn earlier. Now that just gives you a quick example of how the game is played. Again, very quick example, high level. There are a lot more moving parts going on with the game. So many different types of weapons and aircraft. There's no way I can show them all, especially with all the different expansions that come with the game. And seriously, I'm not joking. There's a lot of expansions. I'm going to just give you a brief example here. We've got Warsaw Pact 1. All of these are going to add a sheet of counters, a selection of different missions, and a deck of cards. Warsaw Pact 2, you can see a massive amount of stuff again being added. Don't forget the naval one, which is the one that I was using as my example, which adds naval targets, naval aircraft, naval bandits. We've got the early years expansion, which has earlier aircraft. So these are like the 1960s era. Aircraft, targets, enemy bandits, all that good stuff. The interceptors, and this one is a expansion that adds a whole new level to the game. There's a section of the rulebook dedicated just to this expansion because the missions are played out in a much different fashion than usual. And finally, we have the Northeastern expansion and then the Far East expansion, which adds like the Chinese element into the game as well. So as you can see, just massive amount of gameplay. There's already a good amount of gameplay that comes with just the base game. But if you want to go in deep on this, you can go deep. I mean, there's just an unending amount of replay value if you get all of the expansions. But again, keep in mind, they're divided up based on years, so they all can't be used together, but many of them can be used together. Anyway, let's pop back up and do some final thoughts. All right, so we're back from the table. You guys have got to see just the smallest fraction of what Fulcrum Leader does bring. And I do mean a small fraction. I showed you just a snippet of that game. There is a multitude of other things, other weapons, other aircraft cards, the expansions. Good God, a lot of stuff that just gets added into that game. One of the things I did want to make sure I address very quickly, because I realized I had missed that in my example of play part, is once your aircraft do leave the mission itself and you've done your outgoing event, you do have a chance to go back and do some maintenance, right? So you can have pilots who promote up as they gain experience points, so you get to flip those cards or change their cards out for higher levels so their skills get better over the course of time. If you lose pilots, you can get replacement pilots as well. Basically, there is that little squadron management phase. It's in all the leader games. So what is the final thoughts for Fulcrum Leader? Well, I've always liked the Leader series. It was never a thing about not liking the Leader series. It's changed over a period of time. You know, it was Hornet Leader back in the day, and then they got into the World War II stuff, which I actually took to. I really liked Corsair Leader. It had a little bit of a rough launch, but it did well. I thought there was Zero Leader, which I covered, but I never got the game, so I wasn't able to actually properly review that one. So I don't know how that one panned out. But I liked how that gameplay kind of simulated dogfights. But obviously it's going to be different in something like Fulcrum Leader, where you're not as much focused on the gun combat of aircraft, but now you're using missiles and guided bombs and unguided bombs and rockets and all that good stuff. Well, for the components are actually quite good. Obviously, it's got a mounted map, which I always appreciate that. And like I pointed out in our time at the table, it's always nice to have that sequence of play printed right there on your mounted map, so you don't have to fumble with another player aid to see it. It's right there, and you can just walk it down step by step, boom, 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 to play your game. DVG's always done that with their games of this series, so kudos to them for keeping that up. The counters pre-rounded, punch them out, you're good to go, all nice. Mixed selection, giving you plenty of options, especially for things like your weapons and air-to-air weapons, your bombs, your rockets. The only thing that I found wanting, right? You've got plenty of stress counters and damage counters, weapons counters. You've got counters for all your aircraft, all the different sights and bandits and everything. Was the skills counters, because some people like myself, I like to overpower in some certain skills. So stuff like elusive was the skill that I wanted on all of my aircraft. But unfortunately, there's only a couple of those counters in it. I can't fault them too much for not including that, because some players aren't going to use that many. Some aren't going to use any of the skills, like how many of them do they include? Me, I want to have a counter for each one of mine. There are a few blank counters that I could use to write in on if I want, but that's something that I could just jot down on a piece of paper or keep in mind that, hey, these pilots all have this skill, and you should use one counter to signify it. Or gunfighter was another one that I thought I would use multiple of, because that one gets you a better chance to hit with your guns. It's very hard to hit with your guns in these games, which I understand. It's jet combat. They're not doing a whole lot of cannon fire, but giving a +1 to hit with your guns doubles your chance of hit. I mean, that's big percentage boost when it comes to your cannon shots. So it's a small pain in the butt, but not a huge thing. But overall, the components are good. One thing that I noticed, it has been a while since I have played one of their games, and the cards felt thinner than the previous games. They felt like they weren't quite as thick and sturdy as I previously remember. I'd have to pull out one of their old games to see if I'm right on that. I could be, maybe not. They're not so thin as I feel like I'm going to tear them or anything like that, but they did feel just a scotch thinner than what I remember in the past. So components quite good, and I wasn't expecting a problem with the components anyway, so we can switch over to gameplay. And when it comes to gameplay, it's a Leader Series game. You probably already know whether or not you're going to like this game or not based on the multitude of previous Leader Series games that they've done. Now, I did see some people comment online about the fact that It's the same game, it's just different skin. It's like, okay, well, if you look at it that way, hex and counter games, they're all the same. They all have hexes, they all have counters, they all have some type of combat resolution table or whatever. Having a similar engine isn't the same as it being the same game. But obviously something like Fulcrum Leader and Eagle Leader, they're going to be interchangeable enough that it's really coming down to the skin that is on the game. Those two comparatively are almost the same game, but obviously there are some differences because now you got the Soviet forces here, you got, NATO and US forces. So there's that difference. But when you really get down to it, yes, more than likely for those two, it's going to come down to the skin, right? Just the cover of it and what you want to thematically play as. So at the end of the day, the core loop of the Leader series really hasn't changed. You have your group of whatever it is. Sherman Leader, you had your selection of tanks and infantry support and the aircraft games, Corsair Leader or this one, Fulcrum or Eagle Leader, whatever it is, you're going to have your squadron, your group of aircraft, tanks, whatever. And you're going to have so many depending on the length of your campaign, and they're going to be varying skill levels. I did find that there seemed to be more of a best choice, should I say, when it came to the different aircraft and pilots and skill levels that you would choose. And I was kind of wondering to myself why I would choose some of the others. Some pilots had better skills at certain skill levels, right? So green, newbie, or was it noob, green? Forget exactly what was it. Green, veteran, average, skilled, legendary, all the way up, right? But some of them had just naturally lower stats. And I was asking myself, why would I pick this green pilot who is -2, -3 on his stats versus this green pilot who's like -1, -2, or -1, -1. His stats weren't quite as bad. And even looking at as they skilled up into their higher level cards, it still seemed like that pilot's skills remained lower than the other pilot who had, inherently a little bit higher skills. So it did feel like there was a best option possible to be made depending on the different aircraft that you were choosing from. I focused more on the MiG-29 Fulcrum C on this set, so I wasn't digging into all of them. There are plenty of pilots to choose from, though. I mean, the stack of just MiG-29s is like this freaking thick. So huge amount of different pilots to choose from. I think over time you probably will develop a few favorites, though, that will be your go-to pilots of each of the individual types of aircraft that you can choose from. The rest of it does stay relatively the same to the Leader series. You select your group, the length of your campaign, how many SO points you've got, whatever skills or special weapons that you want to get. You're going to draw X amount of target cards that's going to vary based on your level on the certain tracks. You'll draw your target cards. You'll pick which ones you want to go on for that day's mission. Draw your random sites and bandits. Remove the ones that are no bandits. Get everything set out and do your events, your pre, during, and post-event card draw. So when it comes to the stuff that Fulcrum Leader's adding to it, they do add the Zampolit factor into it, which I actually like. I think that's thematic to how the Soviets are going to operate. They do add that political pilot, that commissar, if you will, who's there to kind of keep your guys in line while they're doing the mission. They're focused on what the party wants. And I think the Zampolit cards do a good job of simulating that fact. There's going to be good cards and negative cards, just like you would see in the events, but it just adds that extra layer. Sometimes it's going to make things a little bit tougher on you. It's going to make you do things that you really don't want to do, but if you don't, then you lose points on that loyalty track, or your pilots get stressed out. So it's that balancing act that's getting added to it. And the Zampolit, just like your CO pilot, can go out on missions. They can get shot down, they can get captured. and they can get replaced just like any of your other pilots. And they do have their own special selection of just Zampilot skills, which is a nice added factor to it to kind of change things up a little bit. Something else that got added to this game that I liked as well was the extended range weapons. I thought that was a nice inclusion. And that, again, that's simulating that you're firing right there over the horizon as far as your radar can reach. You're just barely seeing them blips on the radar, and you're firing that far range missile to hopefully take out some of the enemy bandits before you can come in. I really like that aspect of the game. And there are special rules to that to make that even a little bit deeper if you want to as well. Also, the angle of attack counters. This is the first time I've had a leader game that has had these. And I was thinking about it. I was like, man, I wish they had that for the naval aspect as well. But I can understand why they don't, because naval, you're out there on the sea. You're not going to be able to really close off one significant avenue, right? And the way those angle of attack counters work is they basically signal that this site is put in such a position, it's in a bunker, or it's up against a hill, or it's a tree line, or wherever it is, but it's positioned in such a way that it can't attack in certain directions, but it also can't be attacked in certain directions. And before, with your sights, they're out there, right? You could come in from any angle. As long as you got your hit in or you suppressed them, you were good to go. Now you've actually got to have a little bit of choice coming to that, because those angle of attack counters are drawn randomly. You might luck out and get one that's completely open, but it's kind of a double-edged sword, because if it is completely open, that means it can shoot your pilots too from any angle. But you are only going to do that for the sites that have at least a range of 1 or higher. You're not going to do that for sites that are just that range 0. So like a lone man with a little Stinger missile, you're not going to have to draw an angle of attack counter for him. But I really did think that added that just extra thematic layer. It gives the sites a little more danger. It changes the battlefield outright. Of course, you're a pilot. You're in the air. You can kind of see what's going on, but you can't always attack everything that you see below from every angle. I mean, obviously, if you're flying up high, arguments can be made for any angle, but still it adds that extra little bit layer, makes you feel more Top Gunny-esque, right? You know, as Tom Cruise is flying in through the caverns and jumping up over the mountains to drop his bomb perfectly on point. Bullseye and Womp Rats in his T-16 back home. All right, so at the end of the day, do I recommend Fulcrum Leader or not? I'd say, yeah, this one, it's going to get a recommend from me. It's never that I didn't like the Leader series. I've always liked the Leader series. It's always had a fond place for me. It was some of the first wargaming that I got into way back years ago. So I like this series. I like the changed up nature of it. The fact that now you're looking at things from a different angle. You're playing with completely different aircraft from what we're used to. Weapons that I have no idea of. It threw me a little bit with the fact that the pilots didn't have individual names. They'll have numbers, but that's an easy thing to get used to. Here's the thing. The game is a recommend. The price is like, I'm choking on the price of the game on this one. And that's not on the designer. That's on the producers of the game. I don't know. It's at 140, which is quite high. I remember getting Sherman Leader years ago, and I got that game with a bunch of expansions and extra tiles for it, and I think I paid 80, right? So we're talking like almost double that price. Okay, and in looking at the expansions on their website, the expansions are high too. We're talking $40 for the expansion. And I'm just like, God, okay. There's a good amount of replay value in this game, right? There's a significant amount. Even in just the core box, there's a good introductory campaign, and then even an introductory scenario, and then other scenarios on top of that. All those can be played at varying lengths, varying different types of aircraft, weapons. Obviously, the target draws are going to be changed. So even if you're playing the same scenario, it's going to play different each time. So that adds to the replay value of the game. But it just 140 is high. If it was 100, I'd be a lot more, yeah, okay. And I understand costs have gone up recently, but it just seems like, 140 is a little bit of a stretch on this one. And the expansions, I'm thumbing it over because I understand what it costs to make these products. And one of the things that I know that publishers try to avoid sometimes with expansions are extra counters, because extra counters are expensive. But I noticed on some of these expansions they're including a whole sheet, but it's only got, 3 or 4 rows of actual counters, but the rest of them are blank. And I'm like, couldn't you do a half sheet? Was a half sheet not a possibility? And it might not have been a possibility. But with the expansions being $40 a pop, that's a lot. If you were to get every expansion for this game, that's $280. Plus the 140 you're already spending. I mean, what was that, like $420? That's a lot of money for like an all-in on this game. It gets a recommend. The core game would get a recommend, but I'm almost leaning towards recommending it when it's on sale. Or maybe try to find someone who's reselling, a retailer out there who's selling it at a better price. I'm getting my prices directly from DVG's website. I would maybe check something like Miniature Market, because generally their prices are a little bit lower. And if you could find it in that 100, 110 range, okay, I'm a lot more comfortable with it at that range. I think they're just a touch high on their costs right now. The expansions, 25, I would say all for it. But even 30, I think would be a more fair price. They're about 10, 15% just too high for what you're getting out of it. Yeah, I gave it a quick look. I couldn't find too many places that are selling it. Some of my local stores are selling it, but even some of their older stuff, like you can get Stuka Leader at 76, you can get Phantom Leader at 70, 75, Spruance Leader at 70. So it's not that it's a bad game. I like the game. I like the components. Everything's fine, right? It's just a bit much. Find it on sale, then get it. That's my recommend. All right, that's going to be it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Y'all take care, and I will catch you in the next one.